we should just do our introduction right away, and then I got a couple other things I want to talk to you about that you have no idea about.
Oh, snap. I love that.
Yeah.
Love to be surprised while recording a podcast.
Yeah, recording a podcast live from the USCSS podcast, of course, somewhere in, I think, where are we? We're kind of like, we took a lap. We headed over to where Sevastopol Station was, right? I forget the planet, the gas giant that was around. Doesn't matter.
I don't remember. I don't remember either. So I was just going to let you keep going.
And then we took another stroll over to LV-178 to check out the wreckage of the Marion, the deep space mining orbital, right? And man, all we found was destruction and chaos at both of those locations. So we have straight up U-turned the ship and are headed back towards wherever we were previously in the Zeta 2 Reticuli system, because I'm going to force these "we're on a spaceship" references if it kills me.
I am well aware. I didn't forget the conversation we had. Don't worry.
So we are on, everyone listening at home, we are on a spaceship, of course, the USCSS podcast, formerly the Sulaco. We did steal it. We did find it in abandoned in space, and we did take it over and rename it. And it's just you and me on here. And this is a hard ship to fly with two people.
Yeah, strangely enough, a colonial marine ship is not intended or designed to be crewed by only two people at once.
No,
we're kind of having some trouble, yeah.
We do have fun having power loader battles, though, in the landing bay. That's pretty fun, right? Knocking each other around with those power loaders.
I mean, you're right. It does actually rule a lot. I can't disagree with that. You're right.
We have a rule, though: no plasma torches.
Hey, man. Yeah, we want us both to continue to be alive, to continue to fight each other with a power loader,
Yeah. Let's introduce ourselves. I am, of course, Discarded Doll's Body Hallstrom.
And I am Monster Maze Cheater Rohrbacher.
Oh, no. You stepped on I'm doing it anyway. And we are just a couple of snot-nosed little kids playing Monster Maze in the AC vents of the Alien franchise.
I should specify to all the crew listening out there, I did not know that's what his comparison was going to be when I tossed out my title for this one.
Let's do another one. We are just a couple of space ranchers herding livestock for the colony of the Alien franchise. There we go.
Perfect.
Yeah, there's always something, right?
There's always something.
We're leaving it all in.
Fine by me.
Yeah, but before we jump into what we're here to talk about, because we are entering the Aliens quadrant of the franchise, right?
We sure are.
I want to talk about a few other things before we jump into the Newt's Tale comic book. That is what this episode is about. Specifically, more so issue 1 than 2. But we'll touch on issue 2 a little bit here. Before all that, Kenny, I just impulse bought a game on my Xbox for $5.
Nice. Hell yeah.
And I did this specifically because of you, because of you talking about it. Can you guess what game that is?
What would be on sale for $5 that I would have been talking about? Well, you already own Fireteam, so it wouldn't be that.
It's not Fireteam. I do own Fireteam, even though I never put the disc in because it is on Game Pass.
I'm trying to think of all of the games that I have mentioned on here in the recent past, and because it's how recording a podcast works, the moment we stop recording, I completely forget everything I've said the entire time.
Sure. Yep. That's the way it goes.
I truly have no idea. I couldn't even begin to guess.
Little game called Mad Max.
Ah, hell yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Hell yes.
So just full acknowledgement. I remember my friend Barrett talking to me about Mad Max back around the time it was being released. I don't know if he bought it or not and played it. I don't remember if he told me about it. So Barrett, if you're listening to this, because I know you do listen, sorry if you told me about it first and told me how awesome it was and I forgot because it's been years. But Kenny, you recently were replaying Mad Max and telling me how awesome it is. So now I get to experience it for myself finally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it rules. The have you ever played any of the Batman Arkham games?
I have. Yes. I've played parts of all of them.
the on foot combat is very similar to that, where like, you know, you can punch
Nice.
people, but then they do like the counters, and the counter will like interrupt your attack, so you can just
Okay.
flow between the enemies. But the basic, like, the game is structured around car combat
Yeah.
and the vehicular combat and the driving. Like, it's weird because like I don't play racing games, so
Sure.
it's more pronounced there, but like this is the game where, like, you know, of all the games I've ever played where you have multiple vehicles that you can drive around,
Right.
this is the one where while I was driving around different vehicles, I could feel that they actually like handled differently, you know.
Okay. Cool.
Some cars went faster, some cars turned better, some cars could stop quicker. Like, they really did a very good job of like making all of the vehicles feel different, you know.
Okay. I like that. Yeah, I'm in the mood for some car combat, some carnage, because another game I bought at the same time was whatever this new-ish, I don't think it's that new, but whatever this new-ish Carmageddon is.
Yeah.
Yeah. You ever play Carmageddon back in the day?
I played one of the previous ones, but I
Yeah.
haven't played the newish one you're referring to, no.
I played the original where you ran over people and blood went everywhere, and I also played the sequel where they got so much blowback from the violence that they changed all of the pedestrians into zombies. So you would run into them and it would be green blood everywhere.
That might have been the one that I played, because once you said green blood, I was like, you know.
Yeah, that's the one. I think that's the one a lot of people played. So yeah, I think I'm just in the mood for some vehicular combat. So I'm looking forward to jumping into Mad Max. Might distract me from Fireteam Elite for a little while at least. Anyway, Kenny, you last night, I believe, watched a movie for the first time, something you hadn't seen.
I sure did.
Yeah, what was it?
Well, just for a bit of context out there, we're recording this, you know, about a week after October started, give or take, thereabouts. And at the beginning of October, I decided, like a lot of people, I was going to watch a horror movie every single day of October.
Yeah.
And because I'm a huge dumbass ass idiot, rather than just randomly picking a movie every day, I went out of my way to pre-schedule specific movies on specific days.
I love it.
Because I'm one of those guys where if I load up a streaming service and go, I'm just going to watch something, I'm going to scroll for 25 minutes, never pick something, and then get mad and go do something else. So I have to know beforehand what it is I'm going to watch, or I'm not going to watch anything.
What do they call that? Choice paralysis or something?
Something like that, yeah.
I get that too. There's just so much shit to watch. You spend all your energy looking at what to watch, and then you're just like, I don't want to watch anything now. I'm done. Yeah, I totally get that.
I made a whole bunch of choices, you know, scheduled out my stuff, and because it was one of those things where, since I was going to be watching a movie every day anyway, I decided I wanted to open my eyes and broaden my horizons to stuff I wouldn't otherwise watch.
Sure.
So what I decided to start doing was every full calendar week of October, it was going to be a themed week where I pick a theme, and then every movie I watch for those 7 days has to be tied into or attached to whatever the topic is that I chose.
Holy smokes. I fucking love it.
And for this month, my first week's theme was aliens with a lowercase a. So just generic extraterrestrials.
Right. And they need to be creepy movies, right? Like, you're not throwing E.T. in there.
Yeah, they had to be some kind of horror movie.
Horror adjacent at least, right?
At the very least, yeah. Like, for instance, one of them was They Live, which I would not classify as a horror movie, but it's close enough to count, in my opinion. You know?
I've never seen They Live. I've seen the fight scene, you know, the fist fight.
Yes, I do know that scene, yes.
I've seen highlights from They Live, but I have not seen the whole movie. I've got a kind of complicated relationship with John Carpenter because, like, Big Trouble in Little China is great. Halloween, obviously great. The Thing, obviously great. They Live just looked like shit to me.
Yeah, They Live is actually, like, it's pretty fun. It's like a sci-fi action thriller. It's not really like a horror movie, but it's like, it's intended primarily to be like a satire of like 80s consumerism, you know?
Right.
You know, Keith David is in it and he rules, but that's besides
Sure.
my point. My point is that, like, you know, they had to be horror or horror adjacent movies and somehow be tied into the theme of there is an alien, lowercase a alien in the movie somewhere.
Right. So I know one of the things you watched was Pitch Black. Is that correct?
I did watch Pitch Black, yes.
Yeah. I am, this is not where I was steering the conversation, but I am suddenly interested in just like your off the dome opinion on Pitch Black.
Overall,
Yeah.
it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty fun,
Sure.
but the movie made some extremely insane editing and color correction choices.
Oh boy.
Especially in the first half of the movie,
Yeah.
that were just absolutely a bonkers ass decision.
That whole
like,
first half is overexposed like crazy.
yeah, but like around the like 1/3 or halfway, give or take, right around there, around that point, like a lot of the overexposure and color correction went away and the editing started making sense, and so the movie was a lot more cohesive, and it turned out to be pretty good. But like, yeah, the first, like, I don't know, 40 or so minutes of the movie were just wild to behold.
I remember the first time I watched it, it was a friend's house and his parents had rented it. Like, this is like right when it got released on home video, probably, so it was VHS copy. And we watched the videotape because the rental didn't have to go back yet. And I remember thinking at the end of it, like, this was a pretty good wannabe aliens movie, right?
Yeah, it kind of is.
Like,
yep.
Of all of the movies I had seen that are like very clearly aliens inspired, this was one of the better ones.
I would agree to that. Yeah.
I watched it. I feel like I watched it maybe a year ago. I think I bought the whole Riddick collection.
That's also what I have. Yeah, I bought the entire trilogy on Blu-ray.
I guess minus Dark Fury, the animated special, which I watched at one point because I also had the Riddick games on original Xbox.
My collection has the animated movie on it. So.
Okay, I think I just have Pitch Black, Chronicles of Riddick, and Riddick. So I watched Pitch Black. I'm gonna do the Riddick trilogy, and I watched it maybe a year ago, and I was like, damn, this is still pretty good. Not as good as I remember it, but still pretty good.
I will say, you know, this is my first watch for Pitch Black. This is the first time I had ever seen it. Yeah. And I still have not watched the other two yet.
Well, I will tell you, Chronicles of Riddick is, if Pitch Black is an alien/aliens kind of, what's the word? Not a pastiche, but like inspired by, right? Yeah. Chronicles of Riddick is attempting to be like Star Wars. It's like Star Wars meets Lord of the Rings or some shit like that. Like, it is a grand scale, large scale. It is not, no one in their right mind would dare classify it as a horror movie. Let's just be clear. It is less horror than Pitch Black is.
Fair enough.
And then Riddick, the third one, is kind of more in line with Pitch Black than Chronicles of Riddick. So,
well, I'll probably get around to watching them eventually, but I don't have any of the other two on my list for the rest of the month. So it'll be November at the earliest that I watch either.
November 1st, you're back-to-backing Chronicles of Riddick and Riddick. It's I said it on the show, so you have to do it now. You
know it. I'm looking around and pulling my collar.
But enough of this Riddick bullshit, right? Let's get to what matters.
The point is that I scheduled some movies, and then due to some unforeseen circumstances on my end, I had to re-kajigger some movies around and pick some new ones, mainly because I put some ones on because they were listed as being streaming somewhere. Then on the day I went to go watch them, they had since been taken off of the service, and I had to scramble and last minute replace it with something else.
Sure.
And my movie last night was one of those.
Yeah.
I believe I was going to watch Life last night.
Life?
The 2017 movie with Ryan Reynolds and Jake Gyllenhaal.
Okay, sure. The Venom prequel.
Yeah, pretty much. I was going to watch that, but it had been taken off the service since I made up my schedule. So I had to scrounge around and find something last minute. And so the movie I ended up watching last night was Alien vs. Predator.
Holy smokes. And you have never seen Alien vs. Predator before?
I have not seen either of them before, no. This was a first watch for me.
So we don't need to go too deep in this because this is a film we will be covering in the future in a couple months, right? Maybe 3-ish, something like that.
A few, give or take, yeah.
But initial reactions, I think the people want to hear, man, because we talked about it on I want to say the Prometheus episode or somewhere about there, because I was like, man, Alien versus Predator, like Prometheus is borrowing a lot from Alien versus Predator. So I'm interested. What'd you think of it? Just watching it purely for fun, not dissecting it for the podcast, not diving into like what makes sense, what doesn't, what fits canon, what doesn't, etc. What did you think of Alien versus Predator?
How should I put this? It is extremely stupid.
Yes, it is.
But I had a good time and it's pretty fun.
Right? It's one of those movies for me that like I was so hyped when it was coming out. I remember seeing the teaser for Alien versus Predator prior to a theatrical viewing of Alien, the director's cut, in a movie theater on Halloween night. They ran the teaser for it beforehand, and all it was like close-up shots of the alien and the predator like kind of scanning across their bodies while they make their iconic noises, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I hear you.
And then it was like, coming soon, AVP, Alien versus Predator. And in the theater, I said, first of all, I wasn't being obnoxious because there was only like 7 people in this theater, but I said out loud, holy shit. I could not believe at that time that they were actually doing a fucking Alien versus Predator movie. I had no idea that it was in the works or anything. So I was fucking hyped. And then I watched it. I went opening night with some friends to watch it. I think we back to back Predator and Alien before we went to see it. And I remember it was like hurricane weather. It was Florida. There was like a hurricane, a tropical storm at the very least, right? Yeah. And we went to try to see it at a theater in a tropical storm, and the theater was closed because we were dumb high schoolers and had no idea that this shit mattered.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So then I think we ended up seeing it the next day. So I guess I didn't really see it opening night. I saw it the day after. But I came out of it like not knowing if I liked it or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. Like I said, it's fun, and I think ultimately I probably did like it, but there's a lot of just extremely stupid stuff in that movie.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I had a big problem with is that I cannot fucking believe they made a movie where aliens and predators fight each other.
Yeah.
And they're like, yes, this should be a PG-13 movie.
I know. That was the time, because it was the same time when like Die Hard 4 came out with a PG-13 rating, and they were like revitalizing these franchises, right? But aiming for PG-13 ratings just to try to get like more people to go see them. Right. And honestly, like, I don't remember. I'm not going to do the math right now. I must have been 17. I guess I could have seen it if I was rated R, but like a lot of my friends were like 16 at the time, and theaters around here were cracking down on checking ID. I remember taking a date to see Matrix Reloaded, and I was old enough to see it. It was rated R, and the guy at the box office, who was a friend of hers, wouldn't sell her a ticket because she didn't have her ID proving that she was 17. So like, I'm a little bit like, okay, I get it, right? You need to get the box office. You need to get the teens into the seats, right? And movie theaters are cracking down on selling R-rated tickets to minors. Okay, fine. But also, it's Alien versus Predator. Like, most of your fan base is older than, like, at that time. Like, I feel like the target fan base, like the audience for that movie, would have been people who were over 18 at that time, right? Like my older brother, for instance.
Because like, I'm trying to think, the last Predator movie was 2, which came out in like 93, I think.
Something like that.
Well, the last Alien movie was a Resurrection 7 years earlier in 97, but like, nobody liked that movie.
Sure. You know? But also, those were both R-rated entries, right? So like your audience is going to be older. You know, imagine if they had done the Evil Dead remake and given it a PG-13 rating so they could get more people in the seats, right? Like,
dude, I will go on record right now as
Yeah.
saying to you that the Evil Dead remake is in the top 5 or possibly top 3 of remakes of all time, in
Oh
my
yeah,
opinion.
100%. It might be the only remake that I like would put up there with the original.
Okay. Well, okay, that you would put up there with the original. Good thing you said that, because I was going to clarify. The Thing is better than the Evil Dead remake.
It is 100%.
But since you added on the, put it right up there with the original, that's
Yeah.
different, because the original, The Thing, I've seen it, The Thing from Another World. It's not bad,
Right.
but it's nothing special as far as 50s B movies are concerned,
Sure.
So,
But it's one of those things that John Carpenter saw and loved. Like I think they were watching it in Halloween 2, I think. Or no, they watched the thing in Halloween 1.
Yeah, I was going to say
Yeah.
they were watching it in the first one, because
Yeah.
I've seen the first one, but I haven't seen Halloween 2, and I
Right.
do remember that. So yes, it was in 1.
Yeah, they were watching some other sci-fi movie in 2. It wasn't what was it? It wasn't, what was the one that was that Keanu Reeves was in a remake of? Or were they watching Forbidden Planet?
It was The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yeah, I think they were either watching that or Forbidden Planet in Halloween 2. I can't remember which off the top of my head. But and then in Halloween 3, of course, they were watching Halloween. So
Of course.
yeah. Anyway,
but like I said, I watched Alien vs Predator last night. There were a lot of logical problems that I had with the movie. There were a lot of things that were very dumb and didn't make sense.
Yeah.
But the movie did give me one thing that I really like.
Sure.
Namely, seeing xenomorphs on screen a whole bunch.
Yes.
Because they are all over in that movie, and it rules. I never get tired of seeing those guys. And yeah, it was very dumb, but it was very fun. That is my review of it.
One of them, for one scene in particular, also has like a 30-foot long tail. So,
Yep.
So
that is correct.
They certainly were going for like style over substance with that movie.
For sure.
And, we're going to dig into that in the future. But like, I think I'm right there with you. Like, I've made the comparison of Alien versus Predator and Mortal Kombat 2021, where it's like, there is some cool stuff in here. It's not all coming together for me. Right.
Fair.
So like, those are both two movies that I watched a lot after they came out. Right? Being like, I'm supposed to like this, right? There's stuff in here that I like. Why isn't this clicking with me? Like, I kept going back in the same weird way that I would like go back to the American Pie franchise, because I'm like, I'm just trying to understand, Right. So that's going to be a fun one to talk about in the future. I'm glad you got to see it before you watched it for the podcast. Because
it's funny that you say that, because I think that is the reason why I ultimately decided to watch it last night.
Yeah.
Because like the main 4 Alien movies, I can just sit down and like when I watch them for the show, like just take notes and take like 3.5 hours to get through the movie, because I keep pausing every 2 minutes to write stuff down or whatever. But like, it was one of those things where, since I'd never seen either of the AVP movies before, I figured my first watch, it would be bad to do it when I'm doing it for the show.
Yeah.
Because since I have to keep stopping it for notes, if it's the first time I had seen it, that would like ruin like the pacing of the movie and like, make it a lot harder to watch and understand. So I was like, I'll just watch it now to get out of the way and already be familiar with it, so that when we get to it on the show, I don't have to worry about figuring out what's going on.
Right. Yeah. You can really kind of dig into the nitty gritty of it.
Yeah.
I think I'm wondering if you should also watch Requiem before we get to that one.
Well, I am going to likely watch it before we do the episode on it, but I'm not going to be watching it this month. So
gotcha. Okay.
Because Requiem is even though I watched the first one last night, Requiem is not my movie for today. So
I will say that Requiem, more than the first one, is more of a horror movie. It's almost a slasher.
I've been told also that it is rated R. So
it is rated R.
See, I'm not someone that ever gives a shit about like the ratings that my movies get. But like, if it's an alien movie, it should be rated R, period.
I'm with you. Otherwise, you're just dealing with a whole lot of green blood, and then we're just back at Carmageddon,
Yeah. Swish. Perfect. Flawless. Loved it.
But we are today talking about something else. We are talking about a Dark Horse comic book. I don't have the year it was published in front of me. Do you happen to know?
I do. It was June and July of 1992.
1992. And they're long, and they're like deluxe issues. They're kind of like long issues, right?
They sure are.
A 2-issue miniseries.
2-issue miniseries
Titled Aliens, Newt's Tale.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you who have read this before, you know that about half of this, probably a little bit more, is an Aliens movie adaptation.
Yeah, it is the entirety of issue 2 and the last, like, I don't know, maybe quarter or, fifth or so of the first issue is all just a truncated adaptation of the events of Aliens.
So we're not going to really touch on that stuff too much. We're primarily going to talk about the bulk of issue 1, which is a prequel to the movie Aliens. That's how we're doing this. This is kind of like when we did an entire episode on Alien Covenant, The Last Supper, right?
Yeah, we got 50 minutes out of a 5-minute long short. Yeah.
Sure. And we're now 32 minutes into this recording.
And we only just now started talking about it.
So this is like our lead-in episode to the Aliens quadrant, I'll call it, of our podcast, right? Aliens month, give or take. Even though
roughly
these don't actually line up with the months. And
no, they certainly don't.
Yeah. And we might have to squeeze a couple more extra weeks out of Aliens just because there's a lot of stuff, right?
There's a whole lot of stuff.
So the other thing I want to say up top is there is a book titled Alien River of Pain. We've talked about that. We talked about it in our Out of the Shadows episode, right? And that is a very similar story to what we get in issue 1 of Newt's Tale, just expanded, extra characters, more events, all of that kind of stuff. But we're gonna hold off on that one until later. I kind of want to hold off on talking to that one until down the line we talk about Aliens Special Edition. Cool. Once we're kind of through all of this stuff the first time and we feel like circling back to some of the hits. So we're covering this in place of it, and this is the story of Newt's time on Hadley's Hope prior to the film Aliens, as the outbreak is happening. And some of it is just a direct adaptation of some of the scenes we see in Aliens Special Edition, right?
Yeah, the Special Edition version specifically, because there are a couple, like I just watched Aliens again about a week ago, and there were a few parts in the adaptation half of this story that are not in the theatrical cut, and I was like, oh, that must be Special Edition stuff. That's fun.
Yeah, they clearly had access to the Special Edition for this. And I know it's kind of an interesting story. I'm going to go ahead and read some credits for this. Aliens Newt's Tale was written by Mike Richardson and penciled by Jim Sommerville, with inks by Brian Garvey, colors by Gregory Wright, and letters by Pat Brosseau, and cover art by John Bolton. Now, I did read the Marvel re-release of this comic book. You can buy that on Comixology. I'm not sure if they're doing floppy versions of these, but this is included in the Aliens, the Original Years Omnibus #1, correct?
It is. However, that is not where I read it.
Okay. You read it digitally as well?
I did. I read the original release, like Dark Horse issue versions of them.
Nice. I had a copy of issue 1 that I found in a so in South Carolina, in where Sarah lives, there's a whole bunch of like antique stores, and I found it in an antique store in a pile of comic books for like $1. And I was scrounging through these things on a visit, trying to find issues of G.I. Joe comics, Marvel G.I. Joe comics and stuff like that for my brother as part of a Christmas gift, because he was like really trying to round out his G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero collection.
Right.
And because he's an Aliens fan, I found this Newt's Tale comic book, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to get this for him also. So I had a copy in my possession for a couple of weeks until Christmas came, and I gave it to my brother. I did read it back then in floppy format. So that was, I had that experience, and that was fun. But now, yeah, I'm reading the digital version. Let's jump into this thing, right? Like, this was a very exciting comic book because I got to see our spaceship, the USCSS podcast, formerly the USS Sulaco, rendered in comic book form.
Yeah, there it was right there, dog.
Yeah. We just added the C. You guys should know that. Like, it's the USS Sulaco. We added the C. We just kind of like scrawled it in a little bit between the letters. It was a dangerous thing for us to do, to spacewalk out and do that, but we did it. And then
we had to do it. That's how it goes, you know.
And then we just spray painted a big red X over the word Sulaco, and in spray paint wrote podcast above it.
You can't see it because podcasting is an audio only medium, but I'm nodding in agreement right now.
Yeah, we take a picture, but it's dangerous to go out in space. We don't really have the air anymore. Correct.
There's no air out there anymore.
It's getting sloppy. Hey, if you want me to knock off this shit, tweet at Mr. Corey Price.
I'm sure he'll love that.
Anyway, so we open on the Sulaco flying through space, right? And we see Rebecca, aka Newt, in the sleep pod, the way she was left at the end of Aliens, right? And the text is telling us that she's having dreams, but they are not nice dreams. It is a grisly nightmare of like replaying her memories from her adventures on Hadley's Hope.
Yeah, there's just a very brief frame story here. It's the first like page or maybe 2 of issue 1, and they just kind of completely forget about the frame story until the final page of the second issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, it establishes that what we're technically seeing is her reliving these memories while she's in cryo on the Sulaco. But again, it doesn't really amount to much until the very, very end. But
yeah, it's just like a bookend situation. Yeah. Also, it's fucking kind of grim. I'm just going to say it because, you know, the end of the movie Aliens is, you know, there's this whole thing about how she doesn't want to sleep because she's having nightmares, and Ripley tells her not to dream. And then at the end of the movie, when they're safe and getting into the sleep pods, Newt asks if it's okay to dream, and Ripley says, yes, I think we can both dream now. And now we get to see Newt's dream, which is a fucking nightmare. So,
yeah, it's not great. It's not ideal, that's for sure.
No, I'm going to go on record and say the disrespect that this franchise extended to her in Alien 3 is my biggest complaint about the series. I'm not kidding. I liked the character of Newt. And again, these are movies that I saw when I was very young, right? So I was of the age to see myself in the movie through Newt, you know?
Yeah.
Because I was a kid, right? But I've heard so many people be like, man, Newt sucks, the annoying kid, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, she was not annoying at all. She was pretty great in this movie. I'm a Newt fan. I just want to go on record.
I don't have any strong opinions about her either way as far as her appearance in Aliens specifically.
Okay, fair. All right. So we're now watching Newt's dream, and it is all rendered in just fantastic 90s comic book art. I love the look of this comic. I love it so fucking much. It's got this old school Dark Horse like way of coloring. Like,
yeah,
I'm just so into it. All of their early Alien books, the Terminator books, all of that stuff. I'm so here for it.
Yeah, there's a couple of characters later on in, I think it's a little at some point during issue 1, I don't remember when exactly, but like they're like walking down a hallway, and at one point they're depicted as like walking like underneath like a shadow of a beam on the ceiling or whatever, and like so they're in shadow when you see them, and their colorization is their skin is red when they're under the shadow, and I was like, oh damn, that is an insane, extremely 90s choice.
I know, I love it though. It's like, this is like peak comic book art for me.
Yeah, it's wild, that's for sure.
Yeah. So our first like real scene of this is an exterior of Hadley's Hope with the atmospheric processor kind of in the background, right? And we got a little Wildcat tractor in the front. And this is a scene that was, in fact, there was a version of this in the special edition where a guy's talking to some communications officer, and they're having the whole conversation about like, did you send a Wildcat team out to check out this quadrant? They're on the radio making sure if they find anything, it's their claim and not the company's. And the guy's like, look, the company says check an area out. I pass the order on. As far as I'm concerned, whatever he finds, is his, right?
Well, ain't that the truth?
Yeah. So then we are then cutting to the family Newt in this Wildcat tractor, right?
The family Newt.
Yeah. Wildcats are They're just like independent surveyors, right? Basically.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty
Yeah.
much, yeah.
This is a family operation. Let's go through the names. Obviously, we've got Rebecca, aka Newt, the star of this comic book, and her brother Tim, right? Their mother's name is Anne, right? Or Annie?
I believe so, and their dad's name is Russ.
Russ, yeah. And Russ is a real piece of shit. This is another scene that you see in the special edition of them in the tractor going out to check out these coordinates, and Newt and Tim arguing about how when they play Monster Maze, she cheats because she can fit into places that the other kids can't, and she says that's why she's the best at the game, etc.
While that they call that cheating just because she's good at it, that doesn't mean you're cheating, you know?
I know, but kids are stupid.
Yeah, they sure are.
Tim's kind of a dick. I'm not a big Tim fan. I'm just going to say it.
Yeah, he's a huge fucking jackass, that's for sure.
Sure. And I'm a big Newt fan, so like
Hey, there you go.
Yeah. Anyway, Mom's like, shut up and quit playing in the vents. I'm going to tan your hides. If I catch you playing around in those vents, you're not supposed to, right? Dad, Russ pulls up on the fucking derelict ship from Alien.
Yeah, the Juggernaut is just sitting there.
Yeah, and lets out a holy shit in front of his kids, and we've scored big, and Mom and Dad are going to go check it out, and they're going to check it out without atmosphere, like pressure suits or whatever, because the planet's been terraformed.
And they're also notably going to be checking it out alone, and they tell Newt and Tim to stay there while they're gone.
Do you think they cracked a window for them? Or do you think it matters in this climate?
Well, see, that's the thing. I don't know, because like we see her tell them to stay in, and then the two of them leave, and then there is a smash cut to the narration box literally says several hours later.
Right. Yes. And this is all stuff.
So let's hope they cracked a window or brought snacks or something.
Hopefully they brought snacks. Yeah. But I'm looking at the artwork, and as Mom and Dad are outside of the tractor, you can see like their breath. Like it's obviously a cold planet. So maybe it's like nice and warm and toasty inside that tractor, you know?
Let's hope.
Yeah. But yeah.
But anyway.
So Rebecca, Newt, wakes up Tim saying Mom and Dad have been gone a long time. She says something that is not in the special edition while she's holding her doll, Casey. She says, I'm scared. I had this dream. It was real weird, which is just more dream stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's an interesting addition, but I might be wrong about this, but I do believe that Newt in the Aliens comics, the Aliens sequel comic, does have some kind of weird, like prophetic dream thing. I have a vague memory of that, and I don't know if that's something that they sort of changed when they renamed the character from Newt to something else because of Alien 3 for subsequent issues that like Newt may have just been having dreams of the Xenomorph, and when they changed the character, made it like she's having visions of an alien race as opposed to just dreams.
Yeah.
So I want to keep an eye on that when we dive into those things in a couple of weeks here.
You got it.
That's all. So this plays out the same as it did in special edition. Mom comes back, throws the door of the tractor open, starts radioing, Mayday, Mayday, we've got a problem, right? And Newt sees the face hugger on her dad's body and just screams.
Yeah, there's just a damn face hugger there, and she freaks the fuck out.
We cut from there back to Hadley's Hope. 25 hours later, Tim and some other boy are trying to get Newt to come with them to sneak over to the med lab because her dad's awake, right?
I think that kid's name is Aaron, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, that kid's name is Aaron, and Aaron sucks.
He does. That's correct. But yeah, like you said, there's been reports that their dad, Russ, is awake in the med bay, and so they want to go over there and see him, but they don't think they'll be allowed in through the door, so they open up the vents and sneak in that way.
Sneak through the vents, yeah. Again, building on... I like that as an addition. I like the kids sneaking through the vents. We know they play in them from the movie, and we know that Newt can fit in places that the other kids can't. I like this. It builds on her ability to survive on her own, you know? Spoiler alert, I guess.
Yes, I suppose, yeah.
I like them sewing that stuff in. So they're like, come on, we won't get in trouble if nobody sees us. We'll sneak through the vents. So they do. They sneak through the vents all the way to the med bay, where Russ and Annie and the doctor are talking about how Russ had this thing on his face for over 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long time, right?
That is a lot longer. If memory serves, that is a lot longer than they normally stay attached on.
Yeah. But I think I don't remember. I'm not going to do a direct comparison to River of Pain. I believe it was a long period of time in that as well. That's just a thing, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess.
Looking at the face hugger in the comic book, it doesn't seem like it's like a royal face hugger, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, we understand that queens have longer gestation periods, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know how. I mean, somebody out there knows how it all works, right? Like, what makes an alien be a warrior, or what makes it be a drone, right? We know that runners usually come from livestock,
Mm-hmm.
and queens come from royal face huggers. Like, but like, we don't know what determines like between warrior and drone, right?
Yeah, like I certainly don't.
So maybe like what we saw in Alien, that was clearly a drone, right? We got the smooth head and everything.
Yep. Yeah, that was.
We see a lot of warriors in Aliens. Maybe warriors have a longer gestation period, and this was just a warrior, right?
Could be. Yeah, could be.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Tweet at us for that answer. Crew Expendapod. Don't tweet Corey. Anyway, Annie's trying to get like the doctor to let Russ come back to their quarters so she can keep an eye on him, and he's like, no, he had that thing on his face for 24 hours. I can't let him out of quarantine, right? But apparently he can let Annie into quarantine. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Whatever. They're all gonna die anyway. Oops.
Ooh. I like this line where he says, look at him, he's half dead after playing kiss face to a lobster, and all he can worry about is his claim, because all Russ is doing is saying, like, that's my claim. I found that ship. What do you mean you sent men to check it out? Because they sent an exploratory party to check the place out after he came back. He's like, they better not take my claim. Right.
Yeah, and he's real pissed off about that claim, but turns out he doesn't really need to worry about it that much because the entire exploratory team comes back and all of them have face huggers on them.
All of them have face huggers on them. And then Chestburster busts out of Russ and he has a surprised look on his face with his tongue sticking out.
Yeah, I it's funny you say that because literally in my notes I have written down I would not have drawn him with his tongue sticking out.
It's
Very
so funny.
goofy looking.
It looks like a Mad Magazine drawing or something.
Yeah, I know. It was way too goofy looking. I would have taken one look at that and went, how about we remove that?
That's so fucking funny. But the darkness of this, that Newt from the vents has seen her dad die when an alien creature burst out of his chest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
God, fucking terrifying. He's patient zero for the overrun of the colony, and we see this chest burster like hop out and scurry away, and everyone is just looking at it like, what in the hot fuck just happened? You know?
Now, there is one thing I would like to mention very, very quickly here.
Yeah.
I believe this chest burster has arms, which
it does.
The other ones in Aliens do, but I believe the chestburster having arms was a new addition to 2, and I don't think the one from the first movie did. Am I correct in remembering that?
I don't remember it having arms either. I wonder if that's an indicator that these are warriors and not drones. Like, I wonder if there's
maybe.
You know,
I remembered reading somewhere that like when they were like, because like I think it was James Cameron's idea for the Xenos in 2 to not have the smooth heads and have like the bumpy, like rough shield looking kind.
Yeah.
I believe he was the one that made that decision, and he's also the one that decided that chestbursters would have arms on them. I believe those were like the two. Well, and I believe he also designed the look of the Queen as well.
He did, yeah.
So,
he was involved in that for sure.
So yeah, my point in bringing that up is I'm pretty sure the one from the first one didn't have arms, and chestbursters having arms was as like conceptually introduced in this one. So it was, what I'm getting at is it was weird to see this thing have arms because I'm generally familiar with them not having arms.
Right. I'm looking at a picture of the burster from Alien. It's not a great picture. I don't see any obvious arms in it. So
yeah,
that could be one of the things that they sort of reworked in terms of how it fits canon, and maybe there is a difference in the way the alien comes out, because if I've learned anything from Fireteam Elite, it's the different versions of the Xenomorph, right? Like, I now understand where Praetorians come from, thanks to some intel I picked up in the last chapter of the game. So yeah, I don't know. I think until someone tells us otherwise, or until I find the appropriate source online, I'm going to assume that if a chestburster has arms, it's a warrior, and if it doesn't have arms, it's a drone.
Works for me.
So we'll have to keep a track of that in the other movies, see if that adds up.
So yeah, anyway, Russ dies via a chestburster bursting out of his chest,
Right.
I guess. And then, even though the narrative doesn't say this, it smash cuts to a few days later.
It does.
And Newt is either getting woken up from sleeping or is about to go to sleep. And her mom basically rouses her from the bed and says, basically, come on, we're being moved. We got to go. Let's go. Grab your stuff. We're leaving.
Yeah, I interpret it because the panel shows Newt with her eyes closed and tears falling. So again, sticking with this whole idea of sleep and dreams and stuff that this book is hitting on thanks to the movie, I get the sense she was laying down and couldn't sleep because she's so terrified. Like, this
works for me.
This is an example of her not being able to sleep. And her mom's like, come on, we're all going to go hole up in, where do they say they're holing up again?
I think they say it's like some room or area in the sub basement or something. Like, I don't remember specifically. I just wrote in my notes that it was just farther inside the complex, but I think later on they describe it as somewhere in the sub basement.
I think it's in the sub basement. I think the idea is there's really only one door into this place that they can barricade, right?
Which is significant. They're moving everyone there because they're also on the way there. They get notification that the Colonial Marines are on their way.
Yeah, Marines are coming, and Timmy's like, the Marines are going to blow away all those monsters when they get here, won't they, Mom? And she's like, yes, I'm sure they will. You know, she's, props to Annie. She's really trying to hold shit together. And like, this is a stressful situation. She just lost her husband, etc. Timmy's fucking bloodthirsty. He's been playing too much Mortal Kombat as a kid, you know.
As all kids do.
Sure. And on the way to this sub-basement area, yeah, they get the word that the Marines are coming, and Annie runs into a guy named Bill Andrews, who she knows from around the colony, and he's like being comforting to her. I heard about Russ, and I'm so sorry. And she's like, I really hope this nightmare is going to end soon. And he's like, it might. We sent an armed team into the atmosphere processor. We found out that that's where their main nest is. So we sent some dudes in there with guns. We got together the hillbilly militia from Halloween 4. Everyone got their revolvers and their shotguns out, and they're going to go hunt down these aliens.
See, if I was going to make a Halloween reference, what I would have said right there is that Tommy got together the mob and started chanting Xenos die tonight and then marched into the atmosphere processor.
Xenos die tonight. Xenos die tonight. So the difference is Halloween 4 is a good movie and Halloween
that is
Kills
correct.
is not.
Well, I actually don't know if Halloween 4 is a good movie. I haven't seen it, but I do know that Halloween Kills is a bad movie, so I'll probably agree with you.
Okay. Yeah, Halloween 4 is a pretty good one. Maybe we'll do a bonus episode. Anyway.
But yeah, anyway, they sent a group of dudes into the atmosphere processor station.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you know it, hand on the top of my head in shock, turns out they all got killed by aliens.
Cut to me doing the Home Alone scream with my hands on the side of my face. Yeah, this team is led by a guy named Drapers, and Drapers is radioing back to them, and Annie's here for this. The kids are here for this too. Everyone's in this communication center, and he's like, we found holy shit, we found out what they're doing to all of the people they took, and we found out what they did to all the livestock. And that is a really, really interesting point that I had never considered, right? Because I was always wondering, like, how did the shit spread so fast, right? First of all, I like that we learned that they sent a team in to investigate after Newt's parents came back, and then all of those people came back with face huggers also, right?
Yeah.
But that was like a team of like 6, and suddenly this whole place is overrun, and there's an active nest inside the atmosphere processor. So like some of these face huggers got loose and went after like the livestock that they were, the colony was using for presumably all the things we use livestock for here on Earth, right? Meat and milk and all of that kind of stuff, poultry,
Yeah,
right?
for
So,
sure.
so some of the aliens in this thing are definitely runners, right? Some of these definitely popped out of cows or goats or whatever they got.
Yep.
We don't really get to see that in the movie, I don't think, but it does kind of explain how squishy some of those aliens are that they fight in Aliens, because some of them are not birthed out of people. Some of them are definitely birthed out of animals.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a cool detail, a cool thing I had never really thought about.
It's one of those things where, like, honestly, it never occurred to me either way.
Right.
Whether, like, where all these xenomorphs came from or whatever, because, like, I believe they say there's 158 people in the colony.
Something 60, maybe 70 families is what they say in the movie.
And I, off the top of my head, do not actually know how many xenomorphs we actually see on screen in Aliens.
Right.
So maybe, for all I know, the total number of xenos in that movie is less than the amount of actual colonists they say there are on the city.
Sure.
So I never thought about it either way, because I'm like, there's probably enough, whatever.
Right. So I will say, as a side note, I rewatched Aliens a couple months ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like right when we were starting to record the show. Like we had just done a couple episodes. I rewatched Aliens, and there are fewer aliens than you think there are, but they do a good job of making you think that there's a lot of them. Like clearly just something in the budget. They're like, we can't do 50 alien suits,
Yeah, that is actually one thing I noticed, is that, like, it's like you don't see as many of them as you remember seeing. And on top of that, they're on screen for a lot less amount of time than you think they are.
Yeah, but I think it's pretty good movie making that you don't really realize that until you really sort of focus in on it,
Yeah, like you don't actually see xenomorphs very much in that movie, but it feels like you see them all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty effective. So Don Draper's over here going into the atmosphere processor with his hillbilly militia, and they all get fucking wasted.
And they get the reports back that everyone in the Atmo station has died, and Annie's response is to ask for a gun so that when the xenomorphs break in, she can shoot her children rather than letting them get taken by facehuggers.
This was fucking grim. This was like, was it the Mist, right?
That is how The Mist ends. Yes, that is correct. Spoilers for The Mist, sorry. Well, the movie version of The Mist. The short story ends differently, but
okay. This is like she asks some of the guys, they're all holed up in this sub-basement level, and she's like, I need a gun. And the guy she asked for the gun is like, shouldn't we keep all the guns in the hands of the people who know how to use them? And she's like, listen, I need to make sure that my children don't end up like those people in the atmosphere processor. And the guy's like, fair enough. Here's a pistol. Jesus Christ. So everyone's holed up in this place, right? It looks like a hurricane relief shelter. There's just cots and stuff and people kind of milling about. Newt's like laying on the cot trying to sleep. Tim is sitting on the floor leaning up against it next to Annie, who's just like vigilantly staring at the entry door with the pistol in her lap and her hand on like the back of Tim's shoulder or something like that, just guarding her children. 20 minutes later, Tim's laying down on the floor behind her. Newt's also sleeping or laying on the bed. There's a commotion at the door, and Newt's like, what's going on, Mom? What's wrong? Annie is still just vigilantly guarding them. I don't know. It's cool to see. So when I listened to River of Pain, I listened to the audio drama as well, and it's been a long time. I don't remember this kind of stuff being in it as much, I don't remember Annie being this, but I really like the character of Annie in this, I guess is the short version of what I'm saying.
Yeah, some of these events, because when I sat down and read this comic earlier for the show, this is the first time I had ever read this comic.
Yeah.
But some of these events did register as familiar to me because some of them also appear in River of Pain.
Yeah, for sure.
But some of this stuff didn't, and I couldn't really remember what stuff was in River of Pain and what stuff wasn't. But like this part didn't seem familiar to me.
Yeah.
So I think they do it a different way in the book, you know?
I think so, because the way it happens in this, it just is just dumb as shit. And I don't mean the idea is dumb. I mean the people in the comic book are dumb as shit, like the characters
That is correct.
in Hadley's Hope. I think that this is a pretty strong and fun comic to read. I'm just noticing all these like subtleties, like with Annie's like posture and her behavior and stuff. I think the art is really, really doing a lot of work in this. Anyway, so there's a commotion outside the doors, right? Someone's claiming they heard gunfire, and they're like, it's got to be Draper's team. They got to be back here. We have to open up the barricade and let them in. And whoever's in charge of this place, the marshal, does he have a name? The red-haired guy with the mustache?
If he does, they never say it in the comic.
He's just like in charge. He's like, I'm not opening the barricade. No, I'm sorry. He's the one rallying to get the barricade open. My bad. He's like, I bet that's Draper's men. Open the barricade, let him in. And there's the guy who's like, go to hell. You're not giving the orders around here. This guy seems like head of security or something.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm not opening the fucking barricade. We've got women and children in here. I'm not risking exposing them to the aliens. And this redheaded hillbilly's like, I'm concerned about the men out there.
Yeah, like this dude's like, I don't want to risk the lives of the women and children. And this other dude goes, yeah, well, fuck you. Open the door. And then they open the door, and guess what happens?
These are just a whole bunch of like nameless characters. And I think I got some of the who said what mixed up there because nobody has names. All right.
Yeah, they're not given any names at all.
Bottom line is like there's some guys who are like, we're not opening the barricade. And then there's some guys who are like, no, we have to open the barricade and let Don Draper back in. And there's more of the guys who want the barricade open than closed. So a fight breaks out and they still manage to open the barricade. And there is Mr. Draper's standing there like a fucking dying zombie with blood pouring out of his mouth and his clothes all shredded, his jacket all shredded. And he just falls over, and we see all around this doorway our xenomorphs just waiting to bust in.
And then they do.
And then they fucking do. They bust in and just start absolutely slaughtering the place. This was fascinating to me. This implies that the aliens, you know how in Out of the Shadows they were like doing these herding tactics because they wanted to capture more people to make more aliens?
Yeah.
This implies they left a survivor, let him stumble his way all the way back here, and they just quietly followed him in order to then raid the place after the doors were open for him. Like, this implies an intelligence of the xenomorph that is maybe beyond anything we've seen, right?
Well, I was going to say, another similar example is from Aliens. They can't cut the power. They're animals.
Sure. Oh, that's a very good point. And then they cut the fucking power, right?
Yeah, and that's said after they cut the fucking power. That's right.
So, like, once these hives are getting big enough and, like, they're all sharing, you know, they get smart, you know, when there's enough of them. It's pretty fascinating.
But yeah, this scene is wild because all these Xenos break in and start just slicing people to ribbons all around, all over the place. And then, like, kind of eye of the storm style, right in the center of the room, there aren't any xenomorphs, there aren't any carnage, there isn't any blood or body parts or anything, because there's Annie and Tim and Newt, and the three of them are standing there and looking at each other, and then Annie raises the gun and points it at Tim's forehead, and Tim just kind of looks down at the ground and starts crying a little, standing there waiting. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, a gap opens, just by sheer coincidence. A gap opens in the fighting.
Yeah.
And they see a vent right there that they can just run over and crawl into.
I'm looking at the page. Newt like reaches out and she's like, "Mom, no, we can get away," and is like pushing the gun down, and Timmy, scared for his life, is like, she's right, and then they're all like, the air ducts, of course, because the kids know the air ducts, you know. So she scoops up the kids, one under each arm, and poor poor Newt drops Casey, right?
Yep, she sure does.
And he's like, no time for that. Get in the vents.
And it is significant. She puts Newt in there first, which
Yes.
is extremely relevant for what's about to happen.
Yeah, because as she's pushing Tim in, a Xeno grabs her leg or something, or just grabs her body and just pulls her back. And Tim's like, Mom, no. This kid's been playing like Doom, right?
Yeah.
He's been playing fucking Doom. He knows how to handle a gun. He jumps out of the vent and picks up the pistol that she dropped. And he's like, I'll save you, Mom.
And fucking starts wasting this Xenomorph.
Waste a Xenomorph.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Xenomorph kills Annie. And then while Tim is wasting this Xenomorph with the pistol, a bunch of acid sprays on him and kills him as well.
We see him shooting this alien in the face. We see the acid blood splatter on his face. He screams as the alien. We just see his legs dangling out of this panel. He's being held up by an alien, and there's just blood pouring out. And then we see Newt looking at her mom's like destroyed, bloody corpse, and she's saying, Mom, you promised not to leave me. You promised. Fuck, dude. This is a brutal, brutal comic book.
Yeah, it is a lot more intense than I guessed it had been going in.
It is more brutal than the movie Aliens. Like,
I would agree to that, yes.
So she, like, the Xenos see her and they start crawling into the vents after her, and she is just like tearing through these things trying to get away. And she has this realization that because she's so small, she can fit into places that they can't. So she does. She slides down this shaft and gets away from them because they can't get down it. And then she's just like, Mom, you promised, as she huddles and cries. So the entire colony's been wiped out by Xenomorphs. She is the only survivor, and she's in here for days and days, sneaking around.
There's just they have like a big 2-page spread of like a montage of panels of her like just barely narrowly escaping getting caught by Xenomorphs, or her up in a vent looking out through the grates as they walk by carrying a body or whatever. And like over the course of this montage where it says she's been surviving on her own for, quote, days, everyone else slowly gets picked off and killed until she is the only person left. And she's crawling through a vent one day, and then suddenly we've caught up with the events of Aliens, because while she's crawling through that vent, she gets scooped up by Ripley.
Yeah, we get the events from Aliens where they find her, they hear the noise, they think it's a creature, etc. It's what you see in the movie. Pretty much exactly. She's gotten Casey's head back, which is nice. I'm glad she was able to sneak back out and grab that. You think she had to like sneak by her mom's dead body to get it? That's fucking grim.
It's very likely, because like once a body's dead, I don't think Xenomorphs generally do anything with them.
Yeah, man. And then this is from here on out primarily the Aliens movie events. There's a couple of weird additions, like when they're going into the hive and stuff like that. There's a lot more banter. Right. Yeah,
that's the thing. There's a couple of additional scenes, and there's also a whole bunch of removed scenes, because again, this is not an adaptation of Aliens. It's an adaptation of the events of Aliens specifically from Newt's perspective.
Almost specifically from Newt's perspective.
Yeah, there is one or two scenes, yes, but like generally speaking, if Newt wasn't there in the movie, it's not depicted in this comic.
Right. So they did one thing where it's when Newt is sleeping before Ripley goes in and joins her, and Burke drops the face huggers in, where they do cut to everyone talking about the atmosphere processor going bad. And
well, I will say though, that like when she gets caught by Ripley and the events of the comic, dovetail into the events of the movie.
Right.
For anyone out there that's seen the movie, that's not actually where issue 1 ends. Right. There's a few more scenes of like, if you recall, when she's caught by Ripley, and then when she like tells Ripley that her name is Newt and her whole family is dead.
Yeah.
And then the final scene of issue 1 is Ripley taking command from Gorman and driving that big tank-like APC
Right.
to like the spot where like 5 or 6 Marines got killed in that massacre.
Yeah.
Like her picking them up in the APC and turning around to drive away is the final scene of issue 1 of this 2-issue arc.
Right.
So
yeah, issue 2 is the rest of the movie Aliens. So the scene I was talking about where they put it in the book even though Newt wasn't present for it is the atmosphere processor going bad and all of that kind of stuff, right? And the plan to remote launch the other drop ship, all of that timeline stuff, we have about 4 hours, etc. Newt wasn't present for any of that. I almost think that they didn't have to include that in the book. I think like it would have been a more interesting adaptation if that had been cut out and it was just Newt waking up, Ripley waking her up to the face huggers in the room.
Yeah,
right?
agreed.
And then they could do the whole Carter, it was Carter, he did this, it was Burke, etc. And then if we just followed Ripley guiding everybody through the vents when the aliens finally break through their barricades, right?
Yeah.
I think it would have been stronger. It would have been a more interesting adaptation. They could have filled something in there maybe with more like dream flashbacks to events that had happened prior to the Marines showing up. That would have been kind of cool. That scene is a weird addition because like the whole premise of this comic is that we're telling the tale of Newt. Yeah, it's in the title.
And then they're like, also we're going to have a whole bunch of info dump here that like Newt wasn't there for and we're just telling you to tell you.
Right.
But it's like that all happened while Newt was asleep. So like she wouldn't know what happened. So why are we seeing it?
It would have also been pretty cool if we had seen like when the aliens capture Newt and carry her to the hive. Like we could have seen, it would have been interesting if we had gotten to see that whole process play out. Because like we just cut to that happens in this to the point where she gets grabbed and then she wakes up in the nest, but like we don't see like the xenomorph knock her on the back of the head with a rolling pin or something, right, to like conquer her out.
We don't. You're right.
It would have been cool to see like an interpretation of the process of being nested, like of being webbed up in the secreted resin, right?
Speaking of Newt being in the nest, though, they do add 1 or 2 brief things there while she's in the nest. She comes across the dead, no longer alive, and I'm trying to think of a synonym for dead, but I can't think of another one. Corpse of her mom webbed up in resin on the wall.
Is that her mom?
It is. She even screams, "Mommy," when she sees it.
It's interesting because her mom has blonde hair, and in my version of this, that character has red hair.
Maybe it's just colored weird, or as mentioned earlier, she's in shadow, and for some reason this comic uses like red rather than gray to indicate shadowed things.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty sure she straight up screams "Mom" when she sees the corpse.
She does. She screams "Mommy," but my interpretation of that was she was yelling out for Ripley, basically. But she never calls Ripley "Mommy," does she? She always calls her Ripley.
Yeah.
In the movie, so that is.
And so I'm pretty sure she just. Which it's weird that she would see her mom down there because her mom got killed by xenomorphs in that room. So I guess that indicates that maybe her mom wasn't actually dead when she fled. But either way, they also add a scene after Ripley shows up to rescue her where they find Burke webbed up in resin.
Carter Burke hived up. I did not remember if this was a deleted scene or if this is in the special edition or something, because I do primarily watch the theatrical version. I haven't watched special edition in a very long time. I don't know why.
I'm not sure, but I think this is in the special edition.
Okay, and it's Burke, and he's all nested up. This is after Ripley has gotten her before she's faced the Queen, I believe.
Correct, yes.
Because she just has to fucking hightail it out of there when she faces the Queen.
Yeah, she hasn't come across the Queen yet. Yeah, and Burke is sitting there all webbed up, and he's like, Ripley, I can feel it moving around inside of me. It's almost time. I need you to rescue me. And she's like, absolutely the fuck not.
She's like, no. She's like, there's no helping you now. She's like, but you can end it yourself. And she hands him a grenade. And he's like, I can't do it. I can't do it. Help me, Ripley. Help me. And she just like fucking walks off because fuck Carter Burke.
Yeah, he's like, I can't do it. I'm not going to be able to do it. I need you to do it for me. And she goes, nope. deuces, bitch, and then just walks away.
So we can speed through the rest of this. It's the movie Aliens. It's all movie
it sure
Aliens
is.
until the very, very end. Let's just pick right up on it. Okay, I just want to say it is a good comic book adaptation of Aliens. I'm not always a fan of especially shorter comic book adaptations of movies, right? Like the one I remember the most from my childhood. I actually did like this. It was the Batman Returns comic book. It hit all the right beats, you know?
Nice. I haven't read it, but nice.
But then, like, I also had the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes comic book adaptation. Worse than the movie. I'll say that right now.
I would believe it.
Yeah. So I think that in terms of comic book adaptation of a movie, this is a pretty fucking good one, and you should check it out. But yeah, it's the movie Aliens. We're gonna talk about that next week. So let's just get right to the end where it shows Newt getting into the sleep pod, having a conversation with Ripley. Are we going to dream? Ripley says, yes, honey, I think we both can. Newt says, do you still promise that you won't leave me? And Ripley says, cross my heart and hope to die, a reference to when they were taking the nap earlier in the comic book / movie, which I don't think was that in the movie? I don't remember. It doesn't matter.
I think it was.
Yeah. The dream ends and new ones follow. Dreams of a past best forgotten and of a future adventure destined to never take place, as the last panel of this is a face hugger climbing on top of Newt's sleep pod. The end.
Yeah, that's how it ends. That is the final panel of the comic.
Fucking the disrespect. It's a fascinating comic book because, as I talked about earlier, there was a whole line of Aliens comics that follow Hicks and Newt post Aliens. Right.
Yeah.
And I believe Ripley does show up in those as well. And when Fox greenlit Alien 3, for some reason that meant, I guess, people just weren't doing alternate realities at the time. Right. Now everything's about alternate realities. Right. We've got like 16 different Marvel universes minimum.
Yeah. Fucking tell me about it.
And like 47 DC universes. Like there's even more.
Yeah.
And they're just like, it's all just coexist now. But those Alien comics were re-released with Hicks and Newt renamed. I think Newt is renamed into a young girl named Billy, and I don't remember Hicks, and I'm hoping Hicks isn't Billy. So this is like an interesting Dark Horse, like they're like dreams of an adventure that won't happen. It's almost like that's a reference to their original line of Aliens comics where Newt was a main character.
It very well could be. I mean, it's as I mentioned earlier, this came out in the summer of 1992,
right?
Which this was actually being released at the same time as the comic book adaptation of Alien 3 that also came out June and July of 92. And so I'm guessing they had, written those comics that were like the sequel to, Aliens that had Hicks and Newt as the main characters.
Yeah.
And then Alien 3 came out and they went, shit, well, we have like 6 years of comics. How are we going to explain this away? And so they tacked on this like final panel ending onto this comic to be like, oh, this is how we explain how these past 6 years of comics are supposed to make sense now that we're also printing the Alien 3 comic. I don't know. But.
Right. Okay, so I'm on Xenopedia. Following the release of the film Alien 3 in 1992, which saw Hicks, Newt, and Ripley all perish on Fiorina Fury 161,
Spoiler alert.
Dark Horse edited the initial Aliens comics in order to keep the events and stories within relevant to the Alien universe. To this end, the names and identities of its key characters were changed. Hicks became Wilkes, Newt became Billy, and Ripley became a synthetic version of herself.
Oh, nice.
These stories were also retitled in reprint editions to their current names, Outbreak, Nightmare Asylum, and Female War. So that's it. So when Alien 3 came out, Dark Horse was like, we don't want to pitch all of our original stories. Let's just change the names and some of the details about them and make them new characters so our stuff could still technically exist in the universe because it won't directly contradict the movies. So I get that.
I also believe I read somewhere that said that, like, You might think that the reason there is a face hugger crawling towards Newt in the final panel of this comic is
Yeah.
because this is a comic about Newt. So, of course, the events are going to happen to the main character of the comic.
Right.
But, like, if you recall, she's not the one that got face hugged, according to Alien 3.
Right.
And the reason why it's like the facehugger is going towards Newt in this comic is because in the Alien 3 comic book adaptation, it is Newt that got face hugged and not Ripley.
Holy moly.
And it changed because like I didn't understand exactly what was going on. I was just like reading it to like understand, like I was just getting the info. I wasn't really like processing how it worked in context.
Sure.
But basically the gist of what I read was that it impregnated Newt and then the facehugger died.
Yeah.
And then it realized that like the embryo, the chest burster or whatever, like there was something going on. I don't remember what exactly, but for some reason it thought that it was not going to be able to like survive fully to gestation in her. So it crawls out of Newt's body through her mouth.
Jesus
and
Christ.
then crawls into Ripley's body through her mouth.
What the
And that's how the chest burster ends up in Ripley. And for the entire like ongoing 3 issues of the Alien 3 comic, that chest burster is gestating inside of her throat, not inside of her abdomen, for the entire run of the comic.
I gotta, I own those. Sarah bought them for me at a comic convention she went to. I need to read that because that's fucking wild, dude.
See, here's the thing, man. There's so many different versions of Alien 3.
Right.
We could not just get an entire month out of Alien 3 era stuff. We could get an entire month out of the alternate versions of 3. Because there's the movie, there's the comic book, there's the audio drama, there's the novelization. All of them are different versions, or in some cases different drafts of the script.
Of the the Gibson Alien 3 was adapted into a comic book, and then also the audio drama.
But those were 2 different drafts of his script, so they're 2 different stories. And it's like, like we could get like several episodes out of just the alternate non-movie versions of the storytelling of Alien 3.
Right. I think what we need to do when we do the Gibson one is like maybe do what we did with Out of the Shadows and cover the audio drama and the comic book as one thing, not, I don't know. We'll see. Tweet us at Crew Expendapod. Tell us what you think.
We'll figure it out. But yeah, like I was saying, though, that's the reason why we see the facehugger crawling towards Newt at the end rather than Ripley. Because in the comic book version of 3, Newt's the one that got facehugged. So,
God damn it! The shit that this franchise does to Newt is nuts. I will say I like the Gibson Alien 3 because Newt kind of gets a happy ending in that, and then Hicks is still stuck with all the bullshit. And I don't think Ripley's really in it at all, not very much anyway. But I'll say it, man. Seeing this, like seeing more of Newt's story, the way that he wrote it in this, just makes you feel so like. Speaking of Halloween 4, this is like how Jamie Lloyd was treated in Halloween 4 through 6. Like that character, just like shitty thing after shitty thing after shitty thing until unceremoniously being killed in the final movie that they appear in. It's just disrespectful. It's half the reason I'm not crazy about Alien 3, honestly. Is just the way they discarded Newt and Hicks, the way they discarded other survivors. Like, I just don't like it as a setup for a sequel, personally. But, I can't do anything about it, so...
Yeah, I mean, that's the movie they made, whether you like it or not. You know?
We'll talk about it when we get to Alien 3. But first, next episode, we will be talking aliens.
There is one last little tiny thing I want to mention that's just
sure.
I don't know if it's necessarily a gripe or whatever, just one thing.
Can I guess what it is real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
Is it when they're in the alien hive, the Marines are in the alien hive, and the one says, this looks like some sort of secreted resin, and then another Marine says, this looks like my ex-mother-in-law's kitchen? Was it that? Was it not understanding that? Was it not knowing why that's in the book?
That was not what I was going to point out, no.
Because I don't understand why that's in the book. That doesn't even feel clever. It doesn't make any sense.
It does not make any sense.
Is his ex-mother-in-law a xenomorph? Is this what her kitchen looks like?
I don't know.
We really doing?
I guess we'll never find out now.
Are we really doing ex-mother-in-law comedy in an Aliens comic book? Is that what the audience wants?
I mean, we are at least once anyway, that's for sure.
What is it?
It's the fact that in this comic, face huggers are literally drawn to just be weirdly colored spiders with tails.
Okay, you're not crazy about the way that they're drawn.
Well, no, because I would say that I have a phobia of spiders.
Okay.
Even more importantly, though, that's not really what face huggers look like.
Sure.
They're spider-like, but they're not spiders.
You have a point. I think that the one when it's wrapped on Russ's face looks pretty authentic, but I see like when they're in the hive, the body is way shorter. This face hugger that Ripley's blown away doesn't have like the ovaries on the side, for instance, right? The egg sacs on the side.
And the legs, like in this comic, they're drawn to be attached to just straight the side, so the legs stick out the side like a spider.
Yeah.
When face huggers, they're more like 45-degree angle between the side and the front, so they wrap diagonally around the head. And also in this drawing you can especially see it in the scene where Newt and Ripley get attacked right after they wake up.
Yeah, I'm looking at that now.
They give them like little heads that have like mandible flaps on the front, and it's like face huggers straight up do not have heads, like in the traditional sense, in the way that they're drawn in that issue. They don't have that.
You know what they're drawn like in this? They're drawn like lobsters, like the thing the doctor said. He's been making out with a lobster for 24 hours. They are very distinctly lobster-like.
Yeah, like, and like face huggers, like, here's the thing. They don't not look like that, because that's still very clearly a face hugger.
Right.
But it's like an off-brand face hugger. Like, I'm looking at it and I'm like, that's close, but that's clearly not exactly correct. They made a few little changes here and there that aren't quite how they look in the movies, just a little, you know?
Okay, so I'm going to posit a theory on this, and then I also have a gripe with this. So I haven't thought about this until just this second, but I was thinking, like, what if... So we've seen queens depicted multiple times in media, and we've typically seen what seem to be queens that have gestated inside of humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Presumably, okay? So that's why they lay these eggs, and the face huggers all look the same. The eggs usually all look the same. I know there's variations, right? There's, obviously whatever the fuck David made in his lab, and then there's the royal face hugger eggs look different than the standard eggs. So, I get it. But if a queen was birthed, what if the queen in this was actually birthed from, and I'm talking just continuity of the comic book here, or I guess in general, if a queen was birthed from something other than a human, if one was, say, birthed from a cow or a horse or some other livestock animal, like they discussed in this, would that queen look different? And if it did, would the face hugger eggs that it laid also have face huggers that look different?
I mean, I would have to assume.
So what if what you're seeing is a face hugger egg that hatched out of a queen that hatched out of like a giant space lobster?
I mean, I was just going to chalk it up to, like, how you ever read like Batman comics from like the 80s and 90s?
Yeah.
You know how there were some artists that just drew Batman's ear cowl spikes to be like 1.5 foot long?
Oh, that was big. Nightfall for sure. He had,
and it's like,
big, tall ears in that.
I just chalked it, the fact these face huggers literally just look like discolored spiders in this comic. I was just going to chalk it up to that. It's artistic license. It's not necessarily exactly what happened in real life. And while I was saying that sentence, I realized just now the frame story of this comic specifically posits that it's Newt's nightmare.
Right. So she may
So
not.
maybe it just looks like spiders because she's like, oh, they look like spiders. So in my mind, they're just spiders, you know?
Sure.
But yeah, like I said, I just chalked it up to like the specific style of the artist of this comic, and it's not necessarily meant to represent, oh, like the fact that this looks different in the comic means it is different than the other ones. That's just how it's depicted by this artist in this comic. You know, I didn't think about it any further than that. But.
Newt dreams in Jim Sommerville pencils and Greg Wright colors.
That's
but
right.
I think I'm onto something here because here, you know, they're more spider-like, right? That queen, remember when we see the queen, she does have like these additional like giant look like spider legs that she sort of detaches from this thing, right?
Yeah, she has the extra legs, yeah.
Yeah, and then
she definitely has extra arms for sure. I know that much.
Right. Who was our mutual crush in Covenant?
Jussie Smollett's wife.
Let's not say his name. That guy sucks.
Well, I can't remember what her name is off the top of my head, and I'm trying to stall so that I can pull it up and find it.
Upworth.
Yes, it is Upworth. Yes.
Upworth. Yeah. So remember in Last Supper, she was talking about how she heard stories of like giant bugs on an outpost just outside someplace, right?
Yeah.
So what if there's giant bugs on LV-426? What if they're spider-like? What if a facehugger got on one of those and the queen birthed out of that, and that explains the more spidery looking facehuggers? I think that this is something that needs to be explored in the alien canon by future creators.
I will point out that they did very explicitly describe LV-426 as barren and lifeless.
No, it's a rock. No indigenous life forms. But that doesn't mean, I mean, we had space fleas in Out of the Shadows. We never talked about that, right?
You bring up a very good point. You said that they specifically state there's no indigenous life forms, which is true, but that doesn't mean there's no life forms. So
yeah, I just think it would be interesting to see. And maybe this has been depicted in stuff. We haven't read.
Yeah.
We've only read and experienced a fraction of the Alien franchise. So maybe there is something out there where there's a weird looking queen that like popped out of a seal, right? And instead of having like spidery legs, all of that one's face huggers have like flippers. Theorizing.
Yeah. You're trying to connect the tissues a lot more than me. I'm like, these face huggers look weird because they were just drawn different. You're like, these face huggers look different because they're a different type of thing that comes from a different guy, and they produce these specific. I can make all of this work. Damn it!
No, I'm not trying to. I'm just saying it's an interesting idea to explore. I think that, yeah. Bottom line, yeah, this guy drew face huggers in a funny way.
Yeah.
You know.
Don't second guess yourself. Stick to your guns. All right. Stick to your guns. That's right. Commit to your bit.
I will say I would like to see that idea explored, and maybe it's been explored in something we haven't read yet. I mean, you just watched AVP. We saw a pred alien in that. We've seen them in other things too. They've been in the comic books.
Well, I'm trying to remember if there have ever been any specifically queens that look different than what we normally associate a queen looking like.
Right.
And we haven't come across very many things that have queens in them. I think Out of the Shadows and Newt's Tale are, I think, the only things that have had a queen so far.
Sure. Of what we've covered for sure. And in terms of the movies.
Of what we've covered, yes.
In terms of the movies, there's Aliens, and then there's Alien, I guess technically Alien 3, right? And then there's Resurrection and AVP.
So there isn't one in Requiem then?
Maybe I'm not mentioning it because I don't want to spoil anything for you.
So there is, got it.
Maybe there's not, and I'm not saying anything one way or another. But yeah, I don't know. It's just something we haven't seen. Anyway, I just think it'd be an interesting thing to explore, and I'm looking forward to finding out if anything has. MK. Nope, that's the wrong Twitter.
That is the wrong show.
Fuck it. Tweet at MK Podquest also.
Sure, why not? But yeah, I think it would be fun to like find out if there have been any Xenomorph queens that have like non-human characteristics. Like if there are any out there in one piece of media that they look different or develop differently, or I don't remember what it's called, like genetic reflex or whatever,
yeah,
like the
DNA,
in canon
DNA
reflex.
yeah.
Like I'm wondering if there's any queens out there whose DNA reflex came from something other than a human, you know?
Right.
But as far as I can think of, all of the queens I've ever personally seen in Alien franchise media, they all pretty much just look like that, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And all the games, I think they all look like standard. Any queen I've seen in the game has looked like a standard queen. So it's, anyway. So I do have a gripe about this comic book.
All right.
And it is very specifically when the man tells Annie that Marines are coming. They got word that Marines are coming, which just doesn't line up with the movie, because in the movie, Gorman and Burke go to Ripley and they say, we've lost contact with LV-426. We don't know why. We don't know it's because of aliens or whatever. Like, we've lost contact with them. So that could very easily be Weyland-Yutani covering shit up, right? But in any case, at that point, the Marines were not on the way, right?
I will admit, while I was reading this comic, I didn't notice that, and so therefore that never occurred to me. But now that you've said it, the first rationalization my brain came up with for it is that was just straight up a lie, and he told Annie that because Annie's kids were right there and he wanted to make them feel a little better about the situation.
Okay, that also
like,
could track.
There's no evidence to support that. That's just, like I said, like, that's a fan theory that I invented out of my head right now to hand wave it away. Who knows if that was the intention in the actual comic? Maybe the writer of the comic just got it wrong and forgot.
Sure.
You know?
And if I'm remembering correctly, in River of Pain, there are already Colonial Marines in Hadley's Hope. And there's like
I think there's some kind of like security force or something. I think I don't remember for sure, but yeah, like the main group of characters in River of Pain is Newt and the Marines that are already stationed there.
Right. So. Yeah. So that's kind of a weird thing too. I think the fact that something like that pops up in two versions of the story of Hadley's Hope, it must mean that Weyland, I mean, obviously Weyland at some level knows about the Xenomorph, sent them to the derelict, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They're executing all of these orders, but they're not giving all of that information to everybody else, right? So, yeah, I think it's likely that they were like, don't worry, we're sending Marines. And they are, but they're not sending them yet. And they're not going to tell the Marines that they actually know the situation on LV-426.
Classic Weyland-Yutani.
Fucking crooks. So I guess that explains it well enough for me. I guess I don't have that gripe anymore. I just had to talk through it.
I mean, it's weird. I'll admit it is a weird choice.
Right.
But
yeah, and that's the thing with like an evil, like shady corporation is you can explain away most things by thinking, no, they're just not being honest with people, right?
Yep, which is what they do. They are, that is basically their corporate motto, is lying to everyone about what they're doing. So.
Building worse worlds.
That is correct.
All right, let's wrap the show up for real this time.
Yeah.
Monster Maze Rohrbacher, where can people find you on the internet?
I am on Twitter. My handle is at CYHOBBEZ. Every day for the entire month of October, I am posting what I'm watching for my daily spooky movie that day.
Nice.
So tune in and follow along.
And see if you can date the day of this recording by tracking down Kenny's tweets and seeing when he tweeted about Alien versus Predator.
That is
correct. You'll know that this happened the day after.
The day after, because as we determined earlier, I said it was yesterday that I watched it. So tune in to find out what today's movie is, I suppose.
There you go. And you can find me on Twitter at Final Neal and Instagram at Final Neal Retro. And check out my other podcast I do with our friend Corey, all about Mortal Kombat, movies, comics, TV shows, anything but the games, at mkpodquest.com, or just search MK Podquest in your podcast app. Kenny, where can people find our show and our social media junk?
Our Twitter, as mentioned earlier, is at Crew Expendapod. Our Instagram is Crew Expendable Pod, and our website is crewexpendable.net.
Did I reference our Twitter earlier? I don't remember.
You told the listeners to tweet at us about something.
Only 7 or 8 times, right?
Well, it was every time you made that crack, you gave a different Twitter account, but one of them was the show account at one point. Yes,
that's right. And if you hate the show, tweet at Mr. Corey Price.
That is correct. Blame him for it.
We will be back next week to talk about James Cameron's Aliens, and we're going to have a guest on for that one, I think. So look forward to that. Strap in. It'll be a long one. Until then, wait, before I do that, go read Newt's Tale. It's good.
Yeah, it's only 2 issues, and one of them is the events of a movie you've probably already seen.
Yeah.
So it's really just 1 issue. So
it's kind of one of these, like, it's I know we talked about the story, but it's you got to see this shit. It's a you got to see this shit situation, much like Archie versus Predator. You just got to see this shit.
Just read it.
So we will be back to talk about Aliens next week. Until then, stay frosty.